The anniversary gift hit the bottom of the kitchen trash can with a metallic thud that might as well have been my heart breaking. 20 years of marriage, reduced to garbage. I don't want handmade junk, Nick. Vanessa didn't even look up from her phone as she said it, her manicured fingers scrolling through what I assumed were work emails. It was always work emails these days. I told you I wanted something real for our anniversary. Something that shows you actually care. I stared at the silver bracelet I'd spent 3 weeks crafting in my basement workshop. Hand-forged links, each one shaped and soldered with the precision I'd learned from my old mentor, each curve designed to catch the light just right. The clasp alone had taken me 6 hours to perfect. That bracelet is worth more than your car payment, I said quietly, watching her reflection in the kitchen window. She was beautiful still, my wife of 2 decades. But there was something cold in her eyes now that hadn't been there when we were young and broke and happy. Vanessa finally looked up, her green eyes flashing with irritation. Worth what? Nick, you make jewelry in our basement and sell it at craft fairs. Don't pretend you're Tiffany. I teach art classes 3 days a week, I corrected, though she knew this. And I run a custom jewelry business, a successful one. She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Successful? We're living paycheck to paycheck while my sister's husband just bought her a BMW. For their 10-year anniversary. A BMW, Nick. There it was. Brent Harris, my brother-in-law, the golden boy lawyer who'd married Vanessa's younger sister Claire 5 years ago. Everything in our house had become a comparison to Brent since he'd made partner at Morrison Klein & Associates, the same firm where my wife worked as a senior associate, climbing her way up the corporate ladder 1 billable hour at a time. Brent makes 3 times what we make combined, Vanessa continued, standing up and smoothing her pencil skirt. He understands what it means to provide for his family. We don't have kids, Vanessa. That's not the point. She grabbed her briefcase and car keys. The point is ambition. The point is wanting more than this. She gestured around our renovated row house in Federal Hill, the home we'd bought together when Baltimore was still affordable, the place where we'd planned to raise children who never came. I watched her leave, heard the front door slam, listened to her Audi start up and pull away. Then I walked to the trash can and retrieved my anniversary gift. The bracelet was undamaged. I'd built it to last centuries. I guess love really is garbage day on Wednesdays. But as I held that bracelet up to the morning light streaming through our kitchen window, something shifted in my chest. Not heartbreak this time. Something harder. Something with edges. If my wife wanted to throw away 20 years of marriage, if she wanted to treat my work like trash, then maybe it was time she learned what trash really looked like. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Frankie Morrison's number. Frankie owned the Artisan Gallery in Fells Point, and he'd been trying to get me to do a solo show for months. I'd always said no, preferring the anonymity of craft fairs and online sales. But anonymity wasn't going to teach my wife a lesson. Frankie, it's Nick Landry. About that gallery show you mentioned. I'm ready. 3 weeks later, I stood in Frankie's gallery, watching him hang my piece in the front window. The bracelet looked different under the professional lighting, more substantial somehow. The placard beneath it read, Useless Gift for My Wife by Nicholas Landry. Price, $10,000. You sure about this price point? Frankie asked, adjusting the display stand. He was a thin man in his 50s with paint-stained fingers and the kind of artistic credibility that came from 30 years in Baltimore's art scene. I mean, it's beautiful work, but 10 grand is serious money. It's what the piece is worth, I said. The materials alone cost $800. That's hand-forged sterling silver with genuine sapphire inlays. The technique is called repoussé. It's a lost art. There are maybe 50 people in North America who can do this level of metalwork. Frankie nodded slowly. And your wife threw it away? Garbage day, I confirmed. Said she wanted something real. Jesus. He stepped back to examine the display. Well, if someone's stupid enough to throw this away, they deserve whatever's coming. The opening was scheduled for Friday night. I'd made sure to time it perfectly. Vanessa always worked late on Fridays, usually until 8 or 9. The gallery opening started at 7. I spent the week preparing. Not just mentally, though there was plenty of that. I spent Tuesday morning at the courthouse, filing paperwork. Wednesday afternoon at my lawyer's office. updating documents that had been gathering dust for years. Thursday at the bank, making transfers that should have been done months ago. Vanessa noticed none of it. She was too busy with her big case, the Morrison Industries merger that was apparently going to make or break her career. She left early, came home late, and spent most of her time on phone calls with colleagues, including Brent. I wasn't spying exactly. But when your wife takes hour-long phone calls in the bedroom with the door closed, and when she laughs in ways she hasn't laughed with you in years, you start to notice things. Like how she'd started wearing perfume to work again. Like how she'd bought new lingerie, but I'd never seen it. Like how she'd suddenly become very interested in working weekends. Friday evening arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made Baltimore beautiful. I dressed carefully, black jeans, white button-down, the silver cufflinks I'd made for myself last Christmas. Artist casual but respectable. The gallery was packed by 7:30. Baltimore's art scene wasn't huge, but it was tight-knit and gossipy. Word had gotten around about the piece in the window, about the story behind it. I'd been careful not to name names, but in a city this size, it wasn't hard for people to figure things out. Especially when my wife walked through the door at 8:15 with Brent Harris on her arm. They made a handsome couple, I had to admit. Vanessa in her black cocktail dress and pearls, Brent in his expensive suit with his lawyer's confidence. They looked like they belonged together in a way that Vanessa and I maybe never had. But the look on Vanessa's face when she saw the bracelet in the window was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. "Oh my God," she whispered, loud enough for half the gallery to hear. "Oh my fucking God, Nick." Brent squinted at the placard. $10,000? For that? That's the bracelet I threw away, Vanessa said, her voice rising. That's my anniversary gift. The conversations around us started to die down. People were listening now, sensing drama. You threw away a $10,000 bracelet? Brent's voice carried that lawyer's projection, trained to fill courtrooms. Are you insane? I didn't know it was worth... Vanessa caught herself, looked around at the faces watching us. Nick, we need to talk. Now. I'm mingling, I said pleasantly. It's my opening night. Your opening night? She looked around the gallery like she was seeing it for the first time. This is your work? All of this? The walls were covered with my pieces. 20 years of metalwork, from my earliest crude attempts to the sophisticated jewelry that now sold for thousands online. Necklaces, rings, sculptures, decorative pieces, a lifetime of craftsmanship that Vanessa had dismissed as basement hobbies. Some hobby, said a voice behind me. I turned to see Patricia Wells, the art critic for the Baltimore Sun. She had her notebook out and was studying the window display with professional interest. Mr. Landry, could I get a quote about the inspiration behind this piece? Vanessa's face went white. Patricia, hi. I didn't know you'd be here tonight. Vanessa, how nice to see you. I was just asking your husband about this fascinating piece. Useless gift for my wife. There's obviously a story here. I smiled at Patricia, then at my wife. It's exactly what it sounds like. I made it for our 20th anniversary. My wife felt it wasn't good enough, so she threw it away. I decided maybe the art world would appreciate it more. She threw it away? Patricia's pen was moving across her notepad. A $10,000 piece. She didn't realize the value, I said charitably. My wife works in corporate law. She's more comfortable with things that have obvious price tags. Brent stepped forward, his face flushed. Now wait just a minute. Brent Harris, I said, extending my hand. Good to see you. How's Claire? The question hung in the air like smoke. Brent was here with my wife, not his own, at night, at an art gallery opening that definitely wasn't a work function. Patricia's pen stopped moving. She looked from Brent to Vanessa to me, and I could practically see the story writing itself in her head. I think we should go, Vanessa said quickly. Actually, I said, I think you should stay. Enjoy the show. See what 20 years of marriage looks like when it's properly displayed. That's when the photographer from the city paper showed up. The camera flash caught Vanessa mid-grimace, standing in front of the window display, with her mouth open and her eyes wide with horror. Brent was in the background, looking like a man who just realized he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Perfect, the photographer said. Could you move a little to the left, ma'am? I want to get the price tag in the shot. Vanessa fled, literally ran from the gallery, leaving Brent to chase after her in his expensive shoes. I sold 6 pieces that night, including, to my absolute delight, the bracelet. A collector from DC paid the full $10,000 cash. The story ran in 3 papers over the weekend. Local lawyer throws away husband's $10K anniversary gift. The city paper went with Trash Day Treasure, When Love Goes to the Dump. Patricia Wells wrote a thoughtful piece about the undervaluation of craft artisans and the disconnect between artistic worth and commercial recognition. All 3 papers included the photo of Vanessa looking horrified in front of my display. By Monday morning, it was viral on social media. And that's when things got interesting. Vanessa didn't come home Sunday night. Or Monday. Her sister Claire called Tuesday morning, screaming at me over the phone about how I'd humiliated the family, how Brent was furious, how I'd destroyed Vanessa's reputation at the firm. She's staying with us until this blows over, Claire informed me, and Brent says you could face a lawsuit for defamation. Defamation? I was in my workshop, putting the finishing touches on a new series I was calling Domestic Bliss. I never mentioned your husband's name, or Vanessa's for that matter. Everyone knows it's her. The whole city knows. That's not my fault. I just titled my artwork honestly. Claire hung up on me. I wasn't worried about a lawsuit. Brent might be a good corporate lawyer, but I'd been careful. Everything I'd done was legal, if not particularly kind. And I had bigger concerns than my sister-in-law's wounded pride, like the fact that my wife had been systematically trying to destroy my business for the past 6 months. I'd discovered it by accident while going through our joint credit card statements for tax purposes. Vanessa had been disputing charges from my online customers, claiming fraudulent transactions. She'd filed complaints with my payment processor, alleging that I was running a scam operation. She'd even reported my workshop to the city as an unlicensed business, forcing me to spend 3 days and $500 getting permits I'd already had. Death by 1,000 cuts, designed to make my hobby too expensive and troublesome to continue. But Vanessa had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated both my intelligence and my connections. Marty Kowalski had been my partner when I was still a Baltimore cop, back in the 90s, before a back injury forced me into early retirement. He'd gone on to make detective, then retired himself 5 years ago to start a private investigation firm. We'd stayed friends, drinking buddies who met every few months to complain about our wives and reminisce about the old days. Marty had always been the better investigator. "Your wife's been busy," he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. We were sitting in Murphy's Pub, our usual spot, surrounded by the comfortable darkness of a place that understood men and their problems. 6 months of systematic sabotage. Very professional, very careful. She's smart. Not smart enough, I said, opening the folder. She left a paper trail. That's not all she left. Marty took a sip of his beer. Nick, I gotta ask, how's your marriage been lately? I looked up from the documents. Why? Because your wife's been spending a lot of time with her brother-in-law. And I mean a lot of time. The photographs were professionally taken, time-stamped, undeniable. Vanessa and Brent entering the Marriott downtown at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, leaving separately 2 hours later. Vanessa and Brent having dinner at Primo's, the kind of intimate corner table you reserve for romance, not family meals. Vanessa and Brent in his BMW, parked behind the office building at 10 p.m. on a Thursday, engaged in activities that definitely weren't work-related. How long, I asked. Best I can tell, about 8 months. Started around the time of Claire's birthday party. I remembered that party. Brent had been particularly friendly, asking about my work, seeming genuinely interested for the first time since I'd known him. Vanessa had been glowing, happier than she'd been in months. I'd thought they were finally warming up to me. There's more, Marty said gently. Financial stuff. Your wife's been moving money around. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger bank alerts, but it adds up. She's building a nest egg. For what? Divorce, probably. She's getting ready to leave you, Nick. And she's planning to take as much as she can when she goes. I closed the folder and finished my beer. Around us, Murphy's continued its nightly ritual of drowning sorrows and celebrating small victories. The Orioles game played silently on the TV above the bar. Life went on, indifferent to the collapse of my marriage. "What do you want to do?" Marty asked. I thought about it. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of building a life together, of supporting each other through good times and bad, 20 years of love and trust and shared dreams, all of it thrown away like a piece of handmade jewelry. "I want to file for divorce," I said. "But first, I want to make sure I'm protected." Marty nodded. "I know a guy." The guy was Thomas Chen, a divorce attorney who specialized in protecting assets from vindictive spouses. He was expensive, but Marty vouched for him. And after the gallery opening's success, I could afford expensive. "The good news is that Maryland's an equitable distribution state," Chen explained during our consultation. "And the bad news is that your wife's a lawyer, so she knows how to hide assets and manipulate the system." "What about my business?" "That's where things get interesting. Technically, anything you created during the marriage is marital property. But if you can prove that your wife actively sabotaged the business, tried to destroy its value, then you might have grounds to claim it as separate property." I handed him Marty's folder. "Will this help?" Chen flipped through the documents, his expression growing more interested with each page. "Oh yes, this will help very much." We spent 2 hours going over my options. By the time I left Chen's office, I had a plan. Step one was protecting my assets. Over the next week, I quietly moved my equipment out of the basement workshop and into a storage unit rented under my brother's name. I transferred my business accounts to a new bank, established new payment processing under my LLC, and moved my inventory to Frankie's gallery for safekeeping. Step two was documentation. I printed out every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence that showed Vanessa's systematic campaign to destroy my livelihood. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different locations. Step 3 was timing. I waited until Thursday morning, when I knew Vanessa would be at the office, when I knew Brent would be in court, when I knew the maximum number of people would witness what happened next. Then I had the divorce papers served at Morrison, Klein and Associates during the weekly staff meeting by a process server who had no idea he was about to detonate a nuclear bomb in Baltimore's most prestigious law firm. "Vanessa Landry?" The young man's voice carried across the conference room. "I have documents for you." Vanessa's face went through several interesting color changes as she read the papers. Around the conference table, her colleagues pretended not to stare, while absolutely staring. Brent, I was told later, looked like he was going to throw up. But the real fireworks started when Vanessa got home that night. She came through the front door like a hurricane, screaming before she'd even closed it behind her. "You bastard! You complete fucking bastard!" I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, waiting for her. "Hello, Vanessa. How was work?" "How was—" She threw her briefcase at me. I ducked, and it hit the wall behind the couch. "You served me at work, in front of everyone. I thought you'd want to handle it professionally." "Don't you dare." She was shaking with rage, her face flushed, her carefully styled hair coming undone. "Don't you dare pretend this is about professionalism. This is about revenge." "Revenge?" I closed my book and looked at her calmly. "Vanessa, you've been sabotaging my business for months. You've been stealing from our joint accounts. You've been fucking your sister's husband. I'd say divorce is a pretty reasonable response." The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Vanessa laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "Prove it," she said. "Prove any of it." I smiled and reached for the manila folder on the coffee table. Funny you should ask. The photographs hit the coffee table like a deck of cards, being dealt for the highest stakes game of our lives. Vanessa's face went through a spectacular range of emotions as she saw herself and Brent captured in high-definition infidelity. "Where did you get these?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Does it matter?" I leaned back in my chair, watching her world crumble in real time. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" She picked up one of the photos, the 2 of them kissing in his BMW behind the office building. "This is illegal. You can't spy on people." "Actually, I can. You're in public places, no expectation of privacy." My PI was very careful about that. "Your PI?" She looked up sharply. "You hired a private investigator?" "Marty Kowalski. You remember Marty. Used to be my partner back when I was a cop, before I became a basement hobbyist. Vanessa sank into the chair across from me, still clutching the photograph. Nick, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain 8 months of systematic sabotage? Can you explain why you've been disputing charges from my customers, filing false complaints, trying to destroy my business? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. I never. Bank records don't lie, Vanessa. Neither do email trails. You've been very thorough, I'll give you that. Very professional. But you forgot that I used to be a cop. I know how to investigate. She set the photo down carefully, her lawyer's training kicking in. What do you want? I want a divorce. Clean and simple. You keep your retirement accounts, I keep my business. We split the house proceeds 50-50, and we both walk away. That's it? That's it. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. I could almost see the calculations running behind her eyes, weighing options, looking for angles. What about Brent? She asked finally. What about him? Are you going to tell Claire? I considered the question. Claire had always been nice to me, in that polite way that in-laws manage. She didn't deserve to have her marriage destroyed because her husband was a cheating bastard and her sister was a vindictive bitch. But then again, she didn't deserve to live a lie either. That depends, I said. On what? On how cooperative you are with the divorce, and on whether Brent decides to make trouble for me. Vanessa nodded slowly. He won't. Make trouble, I mean. He can't afford to have this come out any more than I can. Good. Then we understand each other. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, trying to regain some dignity. I'll have my lawyer contact yours tomorrow. Already done. Thomas Chen. He's expecting your call. She paused at the living room doorway. Nick? Yeah? For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About the bracelet. About all of it. I looked at her standing there, my wife of 20 years, the woman I'd loved since we were kids, the person who'd become a stranger without me noticing. No, you're not, I said. You're sorry you got caught. She didn't argue. After she left, to stay with Claire again, presumably, I poured myself a scotch and sat in the quiet house, thinking about the past 8 months. All those late nights, all those weekend work sessions, all those times she'd been too tired or too stressed or too busy for anything resembling a marriage. I'd thought she was just ambitious. Turns out, she was just planning her exit strategy. The next morning, my phone started ringing early. First, it was Claire, crying and screaming alternately. Then it was Brent, trying to sound reasonable and lawyerly, while clearly panicking underneath. Then it was Vanessa's mother, who'd somehow heard about the divorce and wanted to know if there was anything she could do to help us work things out. I let them all go to voicemail. But when Frankie called, I answered, Nick, you need to get down here, now. What's wrong? Just get down here and bring your lawyer. I found Frankie standing in front of his gallery, staring at the broken window where my display had been. Glass covered the sidewalk, sparkling in the morning sun like scattered diamonds. When did this happen? Sometime last night, after midnight, the cops think. Frankie kicked at a piece of glass. They took the bracelet. They? Security camera across the street caught 2 people. Man and a woman. Can't make out faces, but the guy was tall, wearing a suit. I didn't need to see the faces. I knew exactly who had broken into Frankie's gallery. Did they take anything else? Just the bracelet. Left everything else alone. This was personal, Nick. Thomas Chen arrived 20 minutes later, followed by the police. Officer Martinez took our statements while Chen examined the damage and calculated liability. The good news is that your homeowner's insurance should cover the piece, Chen told me. The bad news is that this looks like witness intimidation. Can we prove it? Not without better video, but it establishes a pattern of harassment. That'll help in divorce court. The police finished their report and left. Frankie started calling a glazier to replace his window. Chen went back to his office to file motions, and I went home to plan my next move. Because if Vanessa and Brent thought they could intimidate me with amateur hour breaking and entering, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I'd been a cop for 15 years before my injury. I'd dealt with drug dealers, gang members, and stone-cold killers. I'd testified in court hundreds of times, faced down defense attorneys who made Brent Harris looked like a public defender. My wife had forgotten who she was married to, but I was about to remind her. The plan came together over the next few days. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its execution, and completely legal. Everything Vanessa had tried to do to me, I was going to do to her, but I was going to do it better. Step one was her reputation. Vanessa had built her career on being the reliable one, the steady hand, the lawyer who never made waves or caused problems. She was up for partner next year, a promotion she'd been working toward for a decade. That promotion required a spotless record and the unanimous approval of the senior partners. I started with social media. Nothing obvious, nothing that could be traced back to me directly. But Baltimore's legal community was small and gossipy, and rumors had a way of spreading. The story of the thrown-away bracelet had already made the rounds. Now came the whispered questions about Vanessa's judgment, her stability, her personal life. Was she really partner material? Could the firm trust someone who'd publicly humiliated herself over a piece of jewelry? Step two was professional. I had Marty make some discreet inquiries about the Morrison Industries merger, the big case that was supposed to make Vanessa's career. It turned out there were some irregularities in how the case was being handled, some corners being cut that could cause problems down the line. Nothing illegal, but nothing that would look good in a bar association review either. Step three was personal. I waited until Friday night, when I knew Vanessa and Brent would be together, when I knew they'd be feeling safe and confident. Then I had them followed. Not by Marty this time, by a whole team of investigators, photographers, and legal observers. Professional grade surveillance. The kind that costs serious money but produces courtroom-quality evidence. By Sunday morning, I had enough documentation to destroy both their careers and their marriages. But I wasn't going to use it, not yet. First, I was going to give them a chance to do the right thing. I called Brent's office Monday morning. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "I don't think that's a good idea." "I think it's a very good idea, unless you'd prefer to have this conversation in front of Claire." There was a long pause. "What do you want?" "Lunch, Murphy's Pub, 1 o'clock. "Nick, 1 o'clock, Brent. Don't make me come looking for you." He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usual lawyer's confidence was nowhere to be seen. "You look terrible," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "What do you want, Nick?" I signaled the waitress for a beer, then leaned back and studied my brother-in-law. He was a handsome man, I'd give him that. Tall, well-dressed, successful. The kind of man who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. "I want you to stop," I said simply. "Stop what?" "Stop fucking my wife. Stop breaking into art galleries. Stop pretending you're some kind of criminal mastermind when you're really just a corporate lawyer having a midlife crisis." Brent's face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photograph from the weekend surveillance. Him and Vanessa entering a hotel in Annapolis, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing. "Saturday afternoon," I said. "The Westin, room 412. You stayed for 3 hours." He stared at the photo like it might disappear if he looked hard enough. "How did you—" "I used to be a cop, remember? I know how to investigate, I know how to gather evidence, and I know how to destroy people who cross me." The waitress brought my beer. I took a sip and waited for Brent to process what I just told him. "What do you want?" he asked again, quieter this time. "I want you to convince Vanessa to sign the divorce papers without a fight. I want you to stay away from my business, my friends, and my life. And I want you to think very carefully about whether your marriage to Claire is worth throwing away for a woman who treats anniversary gifts like garbage. And if I don't," I smiled, "then Claire gets copies of all the photos. So does your boss. So does the Bar Association. So does the Baltimore Sun." Brent went very pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." He was quiet for a long time, staring into his untouched beer. Around us, Murphy's continued its lunch rush, oblivious to the life-changing conversation happening in the corner booth. "She's going to leave you anyway," he said finally. "With or without me. Your marriage is over, Nick." "I know," I said. "But that doesn't mean you get to walk away clean. So what's the point? Why not just let it all come out?" I considered the question. It was a fair one. Why not just burn everything down and let the pieces fall where they may? Because I'm not a vindictive person, I said. I just want my life back. Brent laughed bitterly. You're not vindictive? You humiliated Vanessa in front of the entire city. You had her served at work. You're blackmailing me right now. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. He finished his beer and stood up. I'll talk to her. You do that. He was almost to the door when he turned back. Nick, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. I looked at him standing there, my brother-in-law of 5 years, the man who'd stolen my wife and tried to destroy my business. No, you're not, I said. You're sorry you got caught. Just like Vanessa. The divorce papers were signed on a Thursday morning in Thomas Chen's office. Vanessa sat across from me at the polished conference table, her signature neat and precise on every page, her face giving nothing away. She'd lost weight over the past month. Her cheekbones were sharper, her eyes harder. The woman I'd married 20 years ago was completely gone now, replaced by this stranger in an expensive suit who treated our marriage like a business transaction to be concluded. The house goes on the market next week, Chen said, reviewing the final documents. You'll split the proceeds after realtor fees and closing costs. Mrs. Landry keeps her retirement accounts and her car. Mr. Landry keeps his business assets and his car. No alimony on either side. Vanessa's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Morse, nodded approvingly. My client is satisfied with these terms. And my client is satisfied as well, Chen replied. Just like that, 20 years of marriage reduced to a legal document and a handshake. Vanessa gathered her papers and stood to leave. At the conference room door, she paused. Nick? Yeah? I hope you find what you're looking for. I already did, I said. Self-respect. She left without another word. I thought that was.